Alright, hello. So this is going to be a video that will address both some concerns and some ideas about how to utilize vocal fry to find a place in the voice that is gentle, connected, yet not pressed, and also, most importantly, not airy. So this will then go into the importance of making sure that when you pronounce your consonants that you don't let the habitual pronunciation that you may have influence how you want to pronounce them when you are trying to sing in a way that is more released and not constricted and not pressed, and this will influence how your folds feel. So first of all, vocal fry, it's just a different register, just merely a different register that the voice has that we often use stylistically, but in this case it can be used as a rehabilitative type of exercise or as an instructional exercise to teach the voice to respond and teach coordinations that you may not be used to feeling. So in this case, I would demonstrate it by going so you can hear that there can be vocal fry with pretty much such low pitch that you don't really have tone, like this. And that's basically me using my mouth shape to kind of give it lower pitch, like lowering the pitch by creating different spaces, just like different vowel shapes, like so you can hear that. But then there's also vocal fry where you can actually add a little bit of pitch, like and that's not necessarily bad. It's not something that is a fully supported sound, however, so I know some voice teachers, including Marnell, who don't endorse people doing a ton of vocal fry because I think that it's a misconception in many regards. I think that in my discussions with Marnell, the students that he sees asking him about vocal fry and the ones that he sees doing it wrong are often students that do nothing but that, and also students who sing really gently. So these are people who sing like kind of, this is how they would sing, and then they do vocal fry exercises to try to strengthen their voice, and they grow it into something larger by going like so yeah, like I don't agree with that kind of an approach either. However, I think that for someone whose speaking voice and singing voice is not fully efficient, vocal fry can help someone determine the other areas of this spectrum of sound quality. Or not just sound quality, but a thinner feeling, a feeling of efficiency, I would say. So, for example, there's many ways to practice this. Some people can even go like na na na, but I don't really think that that would be the best for you specifically, Janet, because it's not, I don't think that that's something that's easy for you to do right and well. I think, and to do it without worrying, am I doing this right or not? I think what would be most helpful would probably be just to find the sensation and then start adding that feeling to the beginning of that exercise on the 3-tone scale that we were doing before, and something similar to this. So sorry, my room is a mess. I've been really busy. So 3 notes. So you can go so you can hear that I'm going but I'm not going like too pressed. That was a little bit more of a pressed example there, but the first time I did it, it was less pressed, like this. And this can be useful and very, very healthy for the voice, actually, because what's happening is when you hear the vocal fry sound, the sound, that is the vocal folds just getting this close together and literally just gently vibrating on the thinnest edges. So it's like this, like they're separated, right? They're separated. So then you're learning to approximate to the point where they barely touch. Because if you do it too hard and you try to vocal fry too hard, then you end up pressing the chords, and then you'll go from like and you can't vocal fry from like this position of trying to press the chords on top of each other, going like that's what happens. So so you can slowly take away the vocal fry until you have pretty much the folds together, and then getting simultaneous onsets going with that. But it's not something that you should be scared of. I know that you've mentioned you don't like that the way that sounds in the past, etc. But you do have to remember that training sounds are very important, and you have to train your whole instrument. You have to learn the coordinations that you might not like in order to understand them, and then you'll start to like them, because then they'll make your voice better. And I've seen people do vocal fry exercises with higher range, like so that's actually something that you can try as well, just to play around, which this is how you can play around. I'm giving you ideas of things you can try to mess with on your own in order to generate the right kinds of sensations in your body. Because you can't find balance and utilize the right balance unless you know all of the facets of what it feels like to go overboard in one direction and then overboard in another direction, and then to rein them both back until you find the sweet spot. And I feel like for many people, the vocal fry can help them find that sweet spot, and then doing a little bit of vocal fry work can help them find a thinner kind of sound. Because I would say a thicker sound would be like if you take the fold and you make them really pressed together and they go ah. It's like that's not really that great as far as being super useful. It's not very flexible, it's very rigid. And instead going and then learning how to do it without having to fry into it. So that's just basically taking the fry and then reducing the amount of fry and just getting to understand that position right where the voice can fry if you don't lean into the support. And once you lean into the support and give it a note, give it a pitch, then it will start to vibrate efficiently. versus vibrating, because you can't go from a fry into an extremely airy phonation, which is the goal that I'm trying to basically help you, lost for words, help you really get a hold of, I guess, to help you really understand. Because I think that you have a tendency toward not realizing when there's excess air, not realizing when your folds are going, like the word love would be the example there. Instead of feeling like you're going, oh, love, you go, oh, love, and you can hear love going on, and that's the sound of the folds going, just falling apart, going, love, and then you try to save it and bring it back together, and that causes a change in the pressurization, either a blip or overpressing or just plain old keeping the folds too far apart and then trying to push air to try to make sound when you're just not being efficient at all. So in order to keep the efficiency up, you want to be able to be very familiar with the sensation of the folds being together like this, and love, 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 instead of love. That's kind of what's going on there. And so in order to understand and practice that, you can add that to the way you do your onset exercise. Instead of going for, you can start your day, start the exercise, the first few iterations, by doing a little more glottal, going like ah, 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 ah. So that's a little bit more glottal. It's a little bit, even a little bit pressed maybe, but what it is also is it's a nice firm sound. And then from there, you can then transition practicing a little bit into the more fry sound or fry onset there. Ah, 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 So that's an idea. Ah, 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 ah. And then from there, that's just train the physiological function. And as you keep improving, you take the fry away, and you can think of just keeping it balanced and not going, ha, ha. That's wrong, because you're going, ah, and you don't want to go, ah, because that's also wrong. That's kind of like just smacking it in the face, and you don't want your audience to feel like you're punching them in the face with your notes. So in contemporary music, a lot of people use fry onsets to give a gentle, kind of casual, lighter feel to the way they sing, like I'm so in love with you. They don't always go like I'm like that, kind of a more simultaneous onset. A lot of times they'll actually aim for like and that's how Al Green sings a lot of his high notes. He'll be like because he's actually using the fry to take his chords and put them together to allow him to do that. Okay? So I'm gonna move on now from that, and so basically you're gonna try to practice the more firm sound. Make sure not to go ah or ha. Yeah, don't do ha, 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 or ah, like that. you can have a little bit of a ah, ah, if you want. And then you can practice getting it lighter with a ah, ah, ah. These are just training wheels for helping you find balance. And then you move toward getting that balanced sound, which would be ah, 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 ah. So when you can do that, you can start stringing it all together, and it feels different than if you were to go ha, 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 and then go ha, ha, ha. It makes it harder to sing your scales well when you have that kind of an onset. You can't just suddenly decide, okay, let me just take the spaces away and string it together. So when you're efficient, you can just basically do that, and you can just keep leaning in, and you would be able to stay connected between the notes. So then with your L's, so that is something that you need to think about in terms of how do you pronounce your L's, where does your tip of your tongue sit, and how does it flip, and where does the rest of your tongue, where does the body of the tongue that's all over here? So if this is where the tip of the tongue is, where is the rest of your tongue, where's the back of your tongue? You know, where is all of the moving parts, or where are all of the moving parts lying when you're pronouncing the L, and then where do they go? So when you're singing, we need to make sure that the L's don't cut off your air or constrict the throat or cause anything to happen with your vocal folds that is extraneous. So in your case, there's something that keeps happening. This is not just the higher notes, but it gets really obvious with the higher notes. And this can be corrected by doing the same practice on lower notes. You can do like la, so you can even take that same 3-note exercise and you can go la, 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 la. So what I'm doing there is I'm taking the tip of the tongue, putting it right on the teeth. La, 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 la. And I'm feeling where the tongue is. And you can do like la li lu le lo, la li lu le lo, la 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 la, la 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 la. And you should be able to feel and practice doing this until you can find a way to sing an L where it does not interfere with what comes after it. Because you hear, I'm not going la, 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 la. Because that's what's happening when I hear you sing the word love. I hear, if I loved you, loved you. And then you're trying you're like, oh, I have to be gentle. And you go, loved you. And what you hear is the folds aren't vibrating like from that vocal fry approximate position of loved you, but they're actually going loved you, and you're going and then when it goes and the gaps has that extra air coming in, then you're trying to go, oh shoot, I need to put them back together, and it's too late. It's already too late. So to correct this, to rectify this, we're gonna learn to go So part of it might be with letting the tip of the tongue flip, like doing but doing it in a way where it feels very fast and smooth and doesn't feel like there's extra tension. So that can be something you can kind of test with doing or you can even go for just practicing the scale on the L where your tongue is. And you should feel that you're not squeezing, not going, So I can feel difference. If you try to do this, you can go, as if you were about to, take a poo. That kind of a Valsalva feeling, that's too pressed. And then if you kind of go for a feeling of extra breathy, so if you try to go extra breathy and you try to be loud, you'll hear there's constriction, and you'll feel constriction here, just all in your throat area if you're just kind of gently feeling for it. So then, the way you would want to do it to be loud or to be resonant, maintain resonance and efficiency of the folds, while not overblowing or underblowing the air or pressing too hard, would be to have that space. I got right behind the ears. I feel it between the molar, both of them. Like that. And you would want to practice. There's so many fun patterns you can try. You can be doing things like la 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 la, and the goal will be to not clench your mouth when you're saying L and go la, and then notice that when you're singing it, if I were to make you sing the same note in that phrase but change the word to maybe just an ah or an if I of you, you notice I didn't have to close my mouth. Maybe that can help you develop the feeling of not having to go, if I close your mouth, loved you. Things like that. Ways to play around. So, hopefully this helps. So basically you need to find ways to get used to this sensation, get used to pronouncing your L's with more looseness in the jaw. And you don't have to have your tongue like right here, but often I've seen some pretty good results from teachers telling students to put their tip of their tongue even out in front. Just to help them get it out of their throat so they don't go and pull back really hard like that. So it's just a training method, and then when you go back to sing, you just try to keep your tongue right behind the front teeth when you're pronouncing your L's to keep the tongue forward. And you can try to be more like things like that can help you just find patterns, find different things that challenge your voice, to challenge your coordinations, challenge your habits, in order to make it so that when you sing it in a song, your body's already been challenged, and that's not going to be the first time where you're being asked on the spot to suddenly change this core fundamental coordination that you've been using. isolating it like this and then playing with all these different scenarios will help you a ton. So yeah. Let's see. Is there anything else you can practice or play around with this? I've seen some people do That's kind of one kind of exercise. I don't know if I would recommend that for you right now, but it's an exercise where you learn to use the L to flip and help you start without going and then after that, when you're doing your other parts of the arpeggio, the that's more about allowing the chords to stay together when you let off, and then start vibrating them from that that together position instead of going like you don't want to do that because that's not efficient. Efficiency will be the sound of your breath starting and your voice starting. So basically is basically me not starting all of my breath energy yet, and then I can hear it though, just using just enough of the energy to get it to vibrate and pulse on the very edges of the folds. To teach the folds how to be gentle and light, yet then when I lean in with the breath energy, like the I'm still actually leaning in with support, feeling the epicenter of the breath pushing out. Okay? So that should be about it. So lots of L practice, hearing yourself, like practicing going love, 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 love. And I feel the space here. Love, love, love. And I'm not tensing and going love. So if you hear or feel any of that in your voice, then you know that you should probably back down the range a little bit and just kind of get to feel the right coordination, and then try to bring the right coordination back up in your range. Okay? So, happy singing. Hopefully this won't be ridiculously long. Less than 30 minutes. Barely. And yeah. Take care.